Okay, so I've been a skeptic of creepy paranormal things my entire life. I have never believed in that type of stuff, but the things I have heard, witnessed, at my grandparents' farm shakes me to my core. My grandparents own a large plot of land in central Missouri, and they have owned that land for around 40 years. I've been to that farm over 10 times, and every time I go, I always get this terrifying feeling that something is watching me. Like, there's always something behind my back. I have also had many strange encounters there that are downright bizarre. My first encounter with whatever the hell this thing was when I was around the age of 7 or 9. I'm currently 14. We had brought our dog named Spot to that farm. He was a silver lab who I loved dearly. I was exploring the forest behind the house, just enjoying the summer breeze, when my dog started growling, a deep, sinister growl that I had never heard him make. I turned around quickly to see what he was growling at, but I couldn't see anything but forest among more forest. While my eyes were scanning the area of where my dog was growling, some animal shot out of the brush so fast I could barely see what it was, and before I knew it, it was gone. I sat there for what felt like an eternity, absolutely flabbergasted by what I just witnessed. From what I could see of it, it looked like a coyote, but the speed at which it moved was absolutely insane. It moved like at 90 miles an hour and made almost no noise. But the most creepy part was that the place it jumped out of didn't even make an imprint of where it was laying. And from where I viewed it jumping up, I should have been able to easily see where it was hiding. Shocked by what I witnessed, I just decided that was enough and went back inside the house. My second encounter happened when I was around 10. I was visiting the place, and like usual, I was getting the feeling I was being watched. That first day was normal, and nothing really creepy happened. I was just spending quality time with family. But when night came, that's when shit started happening. I was trying to sleep in the twin bed that was shared by my mom's brother when he used to live there. That's when I heard tapping. Not tiny little taps, but loud tap. Almost like it was banging. It was coming from the direction of the window. I slowly sat up and looked at the window, but there was nothing. So I assumed it was just some animal or something like that. 5 minutes passed and no tapping, and I was drifting off to sleep when, this time, not a tap, a slam, a loud slam directly into the window. I'm not talking about like a hit. It sounded as if something absolutely massive hit the window. I shot up so quickly, I nearly passed out. I decided enough was enough and grabbed the flashlight in the drawer and shined it out the window. Nothing. 10 seconds passed. Nothing. I was about to go crawl into my mom's bed when I heard it. A screech. A screech that was not achievable by any human. So loud, it pierced the quiet, peaceful summer night. I can't put into words what that sound sounded like, but it was dark and horrible, and I still remember it to this day. I froze, unable to move muscle. I was so scared. I was sitting there still as a statue, petrified by what I heard. That's when my instincts kicked in, and they told me to run into my mom's room. which I did. For some reason, I didn't wake her up. I just cuddled up next to her and didn't sleep the entire night. All I could think of was that sound, that horrific, terrible, bloody screech. My next encounter was when I was around the age of 13. I was back at my grandparents', just enjoying my time, like I always do when my grandpa suggested that we go deer watching. I agreed because I had been doing this since as long as I could remember. And it was never an issue, and it was extremely fun. So we took the Polaris, and we went around 6 to 7 p.m. to look for deer. We decided to go into the most eastern pasture, because that's usually where we spotted the most deer. 30 minutes passed, and we had seen a few deer, but not as much as we usually do. But then, this is where the shit begins. I get that feeling again, that dreadful feeling that something is there, in the shadows, watching me. But this time, it's a lot more intense. Like if it's right up behind me, but when I look, it's never there. But this time, it appears that my grandpa feels the same presence as me too. And just to let you all know, my grandpa is a very laid-back individual, always joking and having a laugh. The only time I've seen him be very serious is when my great uncle died a couple of years ago. So when I started feeling that I'm being watched, my grandpa goes from a happy and laid-back expression to very serious and alert. He gripped the wheel so tight, his knuckles turned white, and he was just looking around like to make sure something wasn't following us. He then made a massive U-turn out of nowhere and started heading back to the house. I asked him, "What are you doing?" And he replied with, "We're heading back to the house." The tone of his voice was cold, like he had witnessed someone being murdered. At this point, he was gripping the wheel even harder and was absolutely going pedal to the metal full speed back to the house. I decided not to ask any questions until we got back to the house, which we did in no time at all. Once we were there, he rushed me into the house, checking his bag to make sure something wasn't there. When we were inside, he closed and locked the door tight. His behavior was very alarming, and it really shocked me to my core. I then decided that all of the stuff I had witnessed was enough, and I only asked him one question: "What the hell is going on here?" When I said that, he looked at me and gave me a cold expression and said, "I have some things I need to explain to you." We then sat down for 30 minutes, and he explained that whatever this thing was, it was living on his property, and it has been here since the day he moved in, and he and my mother experienced the same thing that was happening to me the very first few years of living here. He explained that he has seen whatever this thing is, and it doesn't like new visitors. He told me about all the things he had witnessed and experienced, and they seemed to have been very pretty similar to what was happening to me. He told me that he knew this was going to happen to me, and that he was always watching to make sure I never got hurt, because he knew this creature better than anyone else. We talked some more, but all of it was the same. It was now late, and he decided that I couldn't sleep alone, so he had me sleep with my mom. We promptly left the next morning. I have not been back since that day. This last encounter isn't really an encounter. Two things have happened at my grandparents' farm. Recently, we brought my sister's horse to the farm. The first night for the horse was hell. My sister's horse has always been very friendly and not shy. but the first night of my sister's horse being at the farm was bizarre. The next morning, my grandpa woke up and was doing his usual chores and went to go feed the horse. He noticed that the horse was acting very weird, extremely shy and timid, but when he took a better look, he was shocked. The horse had 3 10-inch gashes down its side, like something had clawed at it. It was ruled out that the horse ran into the fence, but I think otherwise. Also, around the same time, my grandparents adopted a dog and named it Panda. Panda was a Jack Russell Terrier who was 2 months of age. 5 days later, he was found dead with deep puncture wounds on his body and with his neck slashed up. They said it was a bobcat or mountain lion, but I also think otherwise. Super creeped out by my experience I had over the weekend and curious what others think. I was driving through a rural part of North California, 30 miles from the nearest town. As I was driving down the road, a deer ran out in front of my car. I had no reaction time and I hit it at 55 miles per hour. It ripped my bumper off and the bumper was dragging under my car. I pulled over and called my dad for help. I then get out to look for the deer in the road. I know it was dead because there was blood sprayed all over my vehicle and I hit it square on. I walked around 20 to 30 yards away and I got an overwhelming sense of being watched. I couldn't find the deer, so I turned and speed walked back to my car. It was around 7 p.m. and it was extremely dark. No other vehicles were driving by, no street lights, and barely any cell service. My dad was over an hour away, so I called a friend who lived a little closer, and he started on his way to me. While I sat in the car playing on my phone, I began to hear whistling and murmurs outside my car. I got chills, and the hair on my arms and neck stood up. There was one house to my right, but I didn't see any vehicles in the driveway or people moving around inside. I was on the side of the road by myself for 45 minutes and would occasionally hear these noises. I'm not sure what or who it was, but if anyone has any ideas, I would love to hear. I'm freaked out and I'm now scared of being outside in the dark by myself. Thanks. My roommate has told me the story a few times, and I want to see if anyone else has had similar experiences. As he tells it, he was driving home super late at night, maybe around 3 or 4 a.m. in a suburb of Phoenix, Arizona. Both times that this occurred. The first time, he was driving alone on a road that has an open field to the left of it, when out of nowhere, a black figure on all fours bounds up out of the field, comes up out of the field and across the road in front of his car. As soon as the figure got to the other side of the road, it stops with inhuman quickness, turns around, and looks directly at my roommate. He described the figure as looking simian, completely black, except for the face. The creature's face was a stark, white, human face. Not white as in Caucasian, but white as snow. This happened again a few weeks later, but this time, the creature was sitting in a tree. As his car approached, it climbed down the tree, again with quickness, bounded across the road, stopped on a dime, and turned around and made eye contact with him. This time, he had a friend in the vehicle who also saw it and began freaking out. It was the same exact thing as the first time. A simian black body with a snow white, expressionless human face. My roommate, as always the curious one, turned the vehicle around and began searching for the creature, but it was nowhere to be seen. While trading stories around a campfire, my friend recalled an encounter he had while serving an LDS mission. My friend's mission region had a reservation within its boundaries. However, it was far from where he was serving. On one occasion, him and his mission companion were told to travel more far than usual to meet with some investigators. This, however, took them near the reservation. On their way home, their car ran out of gas, and it wasn't until late at night that they were able to continue the journey home. My friend, who was driving while his companion slept in the passenger seat, chose a different route that took him through some back roads in an attempt to try to get home sooner. He told us he was driving above the speed limit when he noticed movement in the woods lining the road. Because coyotes were common in the area, he took little notice first. Then, he looked out the window and slammed on the brakes. The sudden stop made his companion awake, who wanted to know what was wrong. My friend was shaken and said he would tell him once they got home. He only told him to say a prayer. By the time they made it home, his companion was dying to know what happened, and my friend told him. As I was driving, I looked down at the road next to the vehicle, and I saw 6 men running on all fours, keeping up with the car. I was driving 40 miles per hour. This is my father's story, written from his perspective. When I was about 11 or 12, we lived in a small house made of mud and stone. A lot like our house now. It was 2 of my brothers and I in the house. Everyone else had gone to the Hymas festival and left us to tend the sheep. We were getting ready for bed when we heard the dogs going crazy outside, thinking it was nothing more than coyotes howling in the distance. We screamed at them to be quiet. We began to fall asleep, and the dogs would not be quiet. Somehow, I was able to go to sleep for a few hours. Then, I woke up very late in the night. It was very quiet and still in the house, except for my brother's snoring. I then realized I needed to use the bathroom, so I woke up my brother to take me to the outhouse in the back. He teased me about being scared, which I was. We went out with our flashlight to the outhouse. The dogs then began with their crazy barking out in the brush, going from one place to the next. My brother went first, and I waited outside for him. While I was waiting, I tried to follow the dogs with my flashlight. Then, there was a very loud whine from one of the dogs. Everything went quiet again. It was way too quiet for that time of the year. Not even the sheep were making noise. Suddenly, I heard a few of the dogs by the truck. When I looked over, there was this man. He was unbelievably tall, leaning one arm on the cab roof of the truck. He was looking at the dogs for a little bit, and then suddenly kicking one of them, making them scatter in different directions. The thing then looked up at me, and I saw its face. It had a pure white face, like a full moon, 2 burning red eyes, and a slight smile that was pure black. I could not move or make a sound. It began to walk towards me with long strides until it finally towered over me. All I began to see was dark red, like the color of the blood when you cut the throat of a sheep. I kept getting deeper and deeper into its eyes. I could faintly hear my brother coming out of the outhouse. With this, the thing looked up at him. Reality came rushing back to me. I noticed that my brother was too distracted with his buckle to realize what was going on. I also noticed that this thing had long hands, hovering just inches from my head. Its skin was black ash, and he smelled like a bloated, dead animal in summer. I was still unable to move or speak. The Skinwalker began to move towards my brother. Finally, noticing this figure, my brother became paralyzed, as I was. Closer and closer it drew, reaching an arm out towards my brother's head. When something finally snapped in me, I became unbearably angry. I broke from this trance and lunged at the Skinwalker, raising my arms like a wild animal and baring my teeth at it. A growl came out that I never knew I could make. I became more and more angry at the thing that was trying to hurt us. It kept that smile at first, but the angrier I got, the more the smile faded. Finally, with everything I had, I began to make this primal roar at it. It fell backwards and ran away into the night. Looking back at me, its eyes were dim and dull, its smile now long gone. The next morning, the family returned home from the festival. After telling the story to my parents, they quickly hired a medicine man.